I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the actual content of your episode, like what you're going to say after you hit start record and the purpose of that content. And so that's what the three E's are about. And the three E's stand for education, entertainment, and empowerment. And so those three E's are, I guess for lack of a better phrase for it, they are the type of content that you want to create. Right. And I know we talked about this a little bit before. You have these, you don't have to hit all three of these categories. You want to hit at least one, whichever one makes the most sense for you. And then if you can layer on the other two, or either of the other two or both of the other two, then your content will perform better in the marketplace. And so we'll go into each one of these individually and just define what they are. So education, entertainment, and empowerment, and what those each mean. Welcome to PBP.FM, brought to you by Push Button Podcasts, your go-to resource for grabbing attention, building awareness, and creating authority in your marketplace. I'm Richard Matthews, your host and guide through the wonderful world of podcasting as a driver of business. Here, we teach how to use a multimedia podcast as the cornerstone of your omnipresent content marketing strategy. Whether you're an entrepreneur, podcaster, expert, or thought leader, you'll discover creative ways to leverage your digital content. From blogs to video, from YouTube to TikTok, and everything in between. I'll show you how to stand out from the noise so you can directly connect with potential customers, build strategic partnerships, and drive leads into your business. Get ready for actionable tips and tangible takeaways on improving your digital presence across the board. With that, let's dive into this week's episode of PBP.FM.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Push Button Podcast. I'm here today with Richard Matthews, and we are going to talk about the three E's. So you want to get started on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I know the last couple of weeks we were talking about, we're on our alliteration kick here. We talked about the three B's, or the three B's, the four B's, buy, borrow, build, and blitz for building leads in your business, and how podcasting fits into the build category. And then we talked about what you're trying to accomplish with your podcast, which is the three A's, the awareness, attention, and authority in the marketplace. That was our last episode. And in this one, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the actual content of your episode, like what you're going to say after you hit start record and the purpose of that content. And so that's what the three E's are about. And the three E's stand for education, entertainment, and empowerment. And so those three E's are, I guess for lack of a better phrase for it, they are the type of content that you want to create, right? And I know we talked about this a little bit before. You have these, you don't have to hit all three of these categories. You want to hit at least one, whichever one makes the most sense for you. And then if you can layer on the other two, or either of the other two or both of the other two, then your content will perform better in the marketplace. And so we'll go into each one of these individually and just define what they are. So education, entertainment, and empowerment, and what those each mean. So first one is education. Education is the type of content you see us doing here on the PBP.FM podcast, is we are educating about how to do podcasts B2B, right? And so it's an educational style podcast. And the education means that you are teaching someone else, teaching your listeners how to do something, how to accomplish something in their lives, how to make some sort of change and learn how to do something new that they didn't know how to do before, right? So educational content. That was pretty easy to understand as far as, what's going on. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So second E is empowering, right? Empowering content. And that is how you take the educational content and you take it to the next level, right? And so next level of it, education is educating in such a way that you are giving someone the skills, the tools, and the mindsets they need to actually take action on the content that you've given them, right? And that is where you're going to get into, someone's going to watch your content and get to the end of it and go, you know what, I can actually make this change, right? I can do something with that, right? So if you watch our content on how to put together a studio or whatever, and you're like, okay, I actually understand now. I can go get these lights. I can go set them up this way. I know what 3-point lighting is, right? And you have the skills and the tools necessary to actually be empowered to make change. Does that make sense?
Right.
I know it's a subtle difference, but it's really, really important. And that important difference is that someone walks away from your content with the confidence to do something different than they did before. And it's not just an information gathering exercise, right? And I know if you've paid attention to like our how we structure content, right? That what, why, how, now structure that we follow regularly, that is specifically designed to take your content from being just information, right? A lot of people will just cover the how to. And when we cover the what and the why and the now, and we start getting into all those things, that's really helping someone be empowered to take action on their content. So that's empowering. That's the second
Right.
one. And the third one is entertainment. And entertainment means that someone watched your content and they enjoyed it, right? They enjoyed
Mhm.
showing up for it. And entertainment
Right.
is one of those things that has a wide spectrum of what it means to be entertaining. And I know we've
Mhm.
talked a little bit about this in the past, you and I have off the camera here, so maybe we can dive into it a little bit. But entertainment can go everywhere from you're watching this content, right? You're watching us have this conversation and you're enjoying the conversation that we're having, all the way up
Mhm.
to, big blockbuster films, right? That are
Right.
strictly entertainment and there's nothing else to the content other than the entertainment value. And so entertainment is the one where I think most businesses get their heads stuck and they're like, if I can't do Hollywood quality, cinematic, fancy storytelling, all this kind of stuff, that I can't create content that'll be consumed. And you see that in the range on YouTube, even where there's a lot of big creators that create content that is specifically designed to be entertaining and specifically designed to be viral. And, one of my favorite channels, Mark Rober, he does a lot of those things like big explosions and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
the elephant, what do they call it? The elephant
Yes.
elephant chemicals
Elephant
where they
toothpaste.
yeah, elephant toothpaste, right? They're designed to attract attention. They're designed to be entertaining first and then educational second. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
Mm-mm.
wrong with that approach. But what I want to impress on our listeners here is that you don't have to be the dancing TikTok star and building the big, massive entertainment channel in order to get the result that we're looking for, which is that you are omnipresent in your marketplace, that everyone is aware of what you do, you're building authority there, and people want to work with you in your local community or in whichever space that you work in. You don't have to have that high end entertainment value. It doesn't hurt if you have the tools and the budget and the
Right.
skill set to do all of those things. It's not going to hurt your brand, but it's not
Mhm.
required to do what we're trying to accomplish. And so the story I like to tell my clients here at Push Button Podcasts is if you look at your interview style content like you see Brandy and I doing here, think about your entertainment value as a if you go camping in the summertime where everyone's sitting around the fire and a couple of people are
Mhm.
talking about, we always used to talk about the stars and travel, getting to travel in space at some time. And we talked about things like
Yeah.
being able to do what we call FaceTime now. Be like, wouldn't it be cool if we could video chat with each other? And
Mhm.
now we can't. But right, everyone's had those summer childhoods where you're sitting around the campfire talking with each other. And the way I like to frame that for the people who are trying to build a podcast is look at your interview style content like what we're doing here, like you and your guest sitting across the fire talking about some important subject to you, and your audience are all the other people sitting around the fire that are just sitting and listening to the conversation that you're having, right? And that
Mhm.
can be a incredibly powerful form of connection and entertainment with your audience. And so you can get that entertainment aspect by doing the baseline thing that humans are so good at, which is the mutual exchange of stories. Right, and
Mhm.
so as we're exchanging stories with one another and we're exchanging our ideas with one another, that is the baseline of entertainment. So
Right.
that's where I wanna start off with is just those 3 definitions of education, entertainment, and empowering. Do you have any thoughts on those 3 before we dive in further into them?
No, I think you explained them pretty well. Now it's just giving more specific examples and diving into more of what all of those specifically can mean.
Yeah, so I like to start with education because education it's a foundation for a lot of the B2B style podcasts that we're going to be building ourselves and working
Mhm.
with clients. And anyone who's watching this podcast, a lot of what you're going to be doing is you're going to be working on educating your market. Right, and we talked
Mhm.
about in previous episodes the levels of awareness, right? I remember we talked about that in the build episode, right? The
Right.
what, why, how, now, and you're creating content that is going to help someone become aware of their problems. You're gonna help someone become aware of why they have that problem. You're gonna help someone work through how they solve that problem. You're gonna work through stories and examples and case studies that help them with those problems. That all fits into that educational aspect of you're taking
Mhm.
someone in your marketplace and you're educating them about your topic, right? You see us do this all the time on this podcast where we're taking a subject, whether it's, what your content is about or why you're creating the content or how you set up your
Mhm.
studio, or, we've got lots more content planned, all the way through all of this. But it's always starting first with that education piece of here's what we're talking about. Here's why that content's important. Here's how you can do something with it. And here's some stories or examples, just some case studies that'll help you understand that so you can walk away from this content and actually know what you should do next, right? You
Right.
have ideas for all of that. So that's the educational aspect. And the educational aspect is again that it's the best way I have to describe it for people is to use that what, why, how, now framework and really work through whatever topic you have. So you can work with either your guest that you're talking through, you can ask those questions and talk through them like you and I are doing, or
Right.
you can have your bullet points for your recording outline so you can talk through something and have your stories and everything just lined up ready to go. And educate someone as fully as possible, right, on whatever your topic is. So they walk away with that, what do we call it? I think we talked about it in one of our previous episodes, that bank of goodwill, right? Where every time
Right.
they spend time with you, that they're like, "Oh, I actually learned something here. I walked away
Mhm.
with more than it was a mutual exchange of value. I gave you my time and attention for, 20, 30 minutes, and you gave me an educational piece that helped me understand something that I didn't understand previously." Right?
Mhm.
So that's the education aspect. The second one, the empowering is how you next level that for your customers, right? For your audience. And the next level on
Right.
that is helping them with language patterns and frameworks and tools that can help them take action on the aspects that you're educating about. And so you're seeing us do this live here, right?
Mhm.
Seeing us doing this with, the 10 commandments of podcasting, which was our first series, right? Thou shalt,
Yes.
have good enough production quality. It's things that are helping you remember the things that we're talking about. So those are
Mhm.
called, mnemonics. So you do series, you use mnemonics, you use language, you use lots of different ways to help someone sort of embody the information, right? Instead of just
Mhm.
knowing it, right? That's that, the difference, that 18-inch difference from your head to your heart, where like they actually really feel and understand and can move forward. And like our goal with this content is that you go through, if you were to watch every episode one of these of our show, that at the end of this, that you're not just someone who creates podcasts, but you look at yourself and you say, I'm a podcaster now, right? It's
Mhm.
changing who you are, the identity that you ascribe to yourself. I mean, that's what
Right.
empowering is about, right? It's empowering someone to change their identity around the concepts that you have, right? I have, I go through this content with push button podcasts. I implement the things that I'm learning from them. And now I'm a podcaster and I have a successful podcast and it's going forward. So you're seeing us do that with the Buy, Borrow, Build Blitz and
Mhm.
the Attention Awareness Authority and the Education, Entertainment, and Empowerment, right? They're all in that realm of giving you tools and mnemonics to take the education from just being information in your head to being information in your heart, that you understand that it's part of your identity that you can't really forget or get rid of. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like, I
Oh,
know that
100% does.
yeah, I know it's a small difference, but it's
Mhm.
it's such a valuable insight into how people accept information and then
Right.
use that information to change who they are. So I know, what are your thoughts just hearing me go through that on empowerment and how that's different from education?
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, there's a difference between being educated and having the knowledge to do something and, being empowered to go do it. It's hard to explain in a different way than you have, but it's very much so. I mean, I guess the difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it, I think, is a
Yeah.
big difference as well.
So, I'm not sure if you're as into cooking as I am, but I'm really into cooking
I love
and
cooking.
love cooking. I was talking to your mom about that actually, that we should get
Mhm.
together and learn some of the Indian cooking stuff together because I know you were getting pretty good
We
at it.
absolutely should.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
and I'm a huge fan of that, but if you have ever watched on YouTube or TikTok or any of the things where you'll see, like, the shorts where someone will it's just, like, really close up on, like, the bowl or the cutting board or the cooking surface or whatever, and they're just putting ingredients in, and then, like, at the end of it,
Mhm.
it's just, like, a beautiful meal, and you're like, "Well, that was really pretty," right?
Yeah.
You're like, I watched them make a thing,
Mhm.
and you're like and I even know what all the ingredients were, I saw all the things happen, but there was no empowerment in the video, right?
Right.
It was just the, okay, I saw them create a thing. And then if you watch some of your other tubers that are more on the let me teach you how to cook, right? If you've ever watched Pro Home Chef or That Dude Can Cook,
Mhm.
right? They'll get in and be like, "Hey, we're going to talk about this recipe today. Here's the ingredients that you're going to need, and we're going to go through each of the ingredients, why we're using these ones as opposed to other ones. Here's some things that you could interchange them with, right?
Mhm.
Depending on what's going on." So what they're doing then is not just showing you how to make something, they're empowering
Right.
you with here's why we're making the decisions that we're making. Here's how you could change something out in this recipe. Here's how you can,
Mhm.
in our case, use this microphone instead of the other microphone. Here's how, depending
Right.
if you have lights in your house that aren't these fancy ones that we talk about on our studio, you can use any light. Here's how you could accomplish the same thing, right? We're taking it from just education into empowering you to make these decisions in your own life, right? And to
Right.
change something. And that's really where that difference is you're taking that next level of someone can watch your content, understand why you're making the decisions that you're making in your space so that they can go through and recreate and get similar or, hopefully even better
Mhm.
results than you're teaching them how to get. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Exactly. It's definitely the difference between knowing and understanding.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. Like, I know what, I don't know, something random like string theory is. I don't understand it
Like, I
because I'm not in that space. I don't, that's too much. But yeah, it's definitely just the difference of like with the cooking, knowing the recipe versus understanding the recipe. And like
mhm.
understanding why these ingredients are working with each other the way that they are. And then you can take it even to a deeper understanding of, okay, what other ingredient could I use that would achieve the same result?
Yeah, it's like the difference between, and again, this goes right back into that cooking thing, and we both tend to be
Mhm,
cooking, right? It's salt, fat, acid, heat kind of thing. We know those things, and you're like, okay, the acid in this recipe is calling for red wine vinegar, but that means I could
mhm,
also use balsamic vinegar, or I could use a
right.
citrus vinegar, or I could make my own vinegars and put those in there and change the outcome of the dish, but still have the
Mhm,
baseline, like, understanding of, like, "Hey, this is the, acid in this dish, and here's what it's doing for the dish," and that kinda stuff. So you understand sort of the next
right.
level, so you can make it your own, right? You can do your
Mhm,
own things with it, and that's what empowering is. Empowering is helping your listeners understand your topic at a level that they can then go and massage it and change it and make their own recipe out of your content, right? And integrate it into their own lives. So
mhm,
that is the education and empowerment. And so my recommendation for you is if you're creating content, focus on education and then start looking at helping someone with the empowerment. And so the
mhm,
empowerment, if you're following that what, why, how, now, you're going to get that built in almost automatically because you're going to give someone the why on everything that you're talking about. If they understand the why, like why do
mhm.
you need to have, a good microphone? Why do you need to have good lights, right? Then they can parlay that, I guess, into
Right.
understanding what they should do with their things and know when they're off base and that kind of stuff. So you can that why and the now, which is sharing your perspective and sharing your stories, is really going to help someone understand your content at that next level where they can do something with it. So that's education
Mhm.
empowerment. And so if you're following the stuff that we're teaching, you'll already have those two. Now, the third one,
Right.
entertainment, this is where you have a really wide spectrum. All right. And where I think we have the biggest misunderstanding on how content should be created. And the
Mhm.
reason I think is because there is an obsession on social media with virality, right?
Yes.
And there's an obsession on social media with view counts, right?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people I know because we do a lot of sales calls with people and a lot of businesses, and they're like, "I wanna get this going. I wanna do this. I wanna do these." And the thing that they're looking for is they're looking for, "I wanna get higher view counts." And I know
Mhm.
we've talked about this in the past on, like, what are the actual KPIs that make sense for a business podcast, and the KPI that actually matters is when someone calls into your firm or calls into your office or calls into your business and they say, "Hey," and you ask them, "Where did you find us or hear about us?" And they say, "Hey, I kept seeing you on my news feed. I kept seeing you on YouTube. I kept seeing you on these other things, and I finally decided, I needed to get something taken care of, so I called you guys because you're the ones that were regularly showing up, right? That's
Mhm.
our actual KPI. That's what we care about. We care about, you know, that omnipresence in the marketplace that's creating that attention awareness authority that when someone is ready to do something about their problem that they call you, right?
Mhm.
And so the view count is what we call a vanity metric. It feels good when you have 100,000 people look at your video, but 100,000 people looking at your video does not mean you have leads popping through all over the place. And
Mhm.
we actually see this problem regularly with creators all over the place where they have figured out how to create videos that get attention. But what they haven't
Mhm.
figured out how to do is how to create content that gets people to call them, that gets people
Right.
to ask to do business with them, right? And that's
Mhm.
that's where we wanna make that difference factor for you is that we want content that's going to help you drive business. Otherwise, like, in
Right.
our case, what's the point of doing a B2B style podcast and showing up that way? So, with that sort of like frame at the beginning of like our KPI is not viewership. So, if our KPI is not viewership, then what are we actually looking to do from an entertainment perspective, right? We're not looking to go viral. If you happen to go
Mhm.
viral because of something that you're talking about, or you happen to hit a topic the right thing, again, it's not going to be a bad thing for your business, but it's not our goal, and it's not the thing that we're going to build for, right?
Mhm.
And so that's where I was like, we're not doing you don't have to be the dancing on TikTok. You don't have to do the big giant things like you see Mark Rober
Right.
or Smarter Every Day do on their shows. All you really need to do is you need to have content that is entertaining enough that when your viewers sit down and say, "Hey, you know what? I actually wanna learn something about this," that
Mhm.
it doesn't bore them to tears, right?
Right.
It's
I feel like a really good example, by the way, of something that's still putting education first but is entertaining. Have you ever watched John and Hank Green's Crash Course
Yeah,
videos?
I have watched
I
them. Or
I
Mental
feel like
Floss,
that's
either
a
one of those would be good.
yeah. I feel like
Or
that's a really good example.
Casual Geographic does that. So does Z
Mhm.
Frank with the,
I love Z Frank.
yeah, I can't remember the name of his show, but it cracks me up. True Facts.
The true facts about
Yeah, about
and
insert
then
whatever
whatever.
animal,
Yep.
and he's just telling jokes over the top of educating you about something, and
Mhm.
so his content is
It's like you don't
entertaining.
even realize you're being educated.
Yeah, you don't even realize you're being educated.
Are you ready to amplify your influence and stand out from the noise? Join Richard Matthews on pbp.fm as he explores the power of podcasting, social media, and strategic content to boost your reach. You'll discover the latest trends in video, audio, and influencer marketing, plus unlock insider tips to create binge-worthy content spotlighting you as a leader. With upbeat energy and clear, empowering advice, Richard guides publishers, experts, and entrepreneurs on starting a podcast, improving social strategy, and connecting with your perfect audience. Visit pbp.fm and book a podcast strategy session to start spreading your message today.
So, I know I have a what would you call it? An exercise for people to look at
Mhm.
how entertainment can be done with just storytelling. Right,
Right.
and I know you and I have talked about this off camera, but it is taking the time to sit down and watch comedians
Mhm.
because, unlike your big blockbuster films or your big YouTube channels that are working on creating really entertaining content with,
Mhm.
flashy visuals or flashy storytelling or any of those kind of things that are going on those, a comedian is doing the one thing that all humans can do, right? Which is just learning
Yep.
how to tell a story well. And if you can
Mhm.
learn how to tell a story well with a guest or how to extract a story from a guest, then you have that entertainment skill. And so, like, one of the things that I do, which, drives my wife nuts, but it's worthwhile, is we'll sit down and watch the Netflix comedy specials or we'll watch dry bar comedy. And I have a notepad, right?
Mhm.
It's usually on my phone because I don't write on pen and paper because if I did, I couldn't read it and couldn't do anything with it afterwards. But I do it on my little notes app on
Me
my
too.
phone. Um, and I take note of things like, how are they doing their transitions between stories? How are they using their
Mhm.
callbacks? And what details are they including in their story versus not? What's really fun is if you can find a comedian, do 2 or 3 specials, and tell the same joke in a couple of different specials, because you'll see how
Yeah.
they're changing it in front of different audiences to do things like that. And so I will regularly watch comedians as a way to practice my own stories.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I'll do is, you go to networking events, right? If you go to BNI, which is like a lead generation group that a lot of businesses would go to, or you go to, like, I'm going to a business event this next week. That's all, it's a bunch of attorneys that we go to their events every quarter and we talk with them about podcasting, how it can help their business. We get a lot of
Mhm.
time, around the dinner table or during the breaks to chit chat with people. And I have my set of stories that help get my point across about the things that we do with push button podcasts. And if I'm going to get to talk to 15, 20, 30, 40 people over the course of a few days, I can tell that same story over and over and over and over again and emphasize different bits, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it's, the this part of the story, maybe it's that part of the story, maybe I tell it this way, or maybe I have this thing and you practice your stories so you get to the point where you're like, I know how to get the emotional response that I want from someone with the story that I'm telling, right? That's what a comedian
Mhm.
does. They'll practice their same story over and over again until they have their delivery down, until they have the response that they're looking for from their audience, and they'll practice those things. And you can do the
Mhm.
same thing. And so the more you do that off camera and with your friends and with your family and with your networking events, the better you'll get at telling your stories for your business.
Right.
And your podcast is another one of those opportunities to really practice your stories, right? You'll have
Mhm.
different guests on every time. You'll have different people that are sitting on your co-host chair where you can work on exchanging those stories with each other. And that's where that entertainment factor is really going to come in of learning
Yep.
how to be a good storyteller and a good story
Mhm.
extractor, right? So, if I'm talking to
Yes.
you, how can I extract your story and get you to tell me the things that, that I want to hear from you? And
Mhm.
that is the skill of entertainment in the podcasting space, right? Because we're doing long form content, we're doing, conversations, that kind of stuff. That's what we're looking at. We're not doing the short form or high impact YouTube videos or TikTok stuff. It's a different form of content. That's okay. And so, what we want to impress on people is like, hey, what you're looking to create here is you're looking to create that ability to tell and extract stories. And
Mhm.
yeah, and it's cool to me, I think, because stories are such a foundational part of how humans express themselves to each other. It's how we create progress. It's how we move forward in our universes by telling stories to each other. And so not only will it help you grow your business, but it'll help you in every aspect of your life. So, anyways, what are your thoughts on entertainment with that sort of frame on it?
It's definitely a good thing, and I mean, this might be kind of an out there recommendation, but I mean, as someone I've personally done some stand-up comedy myself, and having done that and learning how to make stories over the most mundane of things, like I had a whole bit about laundry, just doing laundry, and I made that a funny story. I feel like just being able to do that, maybe even try to write a set just to kind of learn how you can make something that's maybe not usually entertaining into something that's very entertaining. Not necessarily that you would have to perform it, but I feel like just writing it out could be a very helpful like exercise. Like write a comedic story about laundry, write a comedic story about mowing the lawn, you know? Take something that is not usually entertaining and try to make it entertaining yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a valuable skill. And the
Mhm.
thing that I love about podcasting is just like almost every other content on the planet, your content is going to get better with time. And you don't have to be
Yes.
perfect on your first one out or your 10th one out or your 100th one out, right? If you watch my podcast, we're at 300 something episodes on the Hero Show. When you
Mhm.
look at my interview skills from episode 1 to episode 300, I'm significantly better, right? And my
Mhm.
stories are better. But you know what hasn't changed? The stories that I'm telling, right? The stories that I'm
Right.
exchanging with my guests are the same stories that I was exchanging 5 years ago, right? I've got new ones,
Mhm.
of course, because 'cause I've had more life and more experience between now and then,
Right.
but the baseline stories that helped create who I am haven't changed,
Mhm.
right? And I've
Yeah.
gotten better at telling them, and I've gotten better at figuring out which parts of the story actually get the result that I'm looking for, get the impact that I want when people hear them. And, I also the more you tell the stories, the more you interact with someone like, like you and I are doing here, the more I'll share a story and I'll understand like, hey, if they say something like this, I know this story really fits well with that, right? And you'll
Mhm.
start to understand that. And it's one of those things that getting out there and doing it is going to make you better at it. And I
100%.
want to give you the permission to be bad at it to start.
Mhm.
Right, and
Exactly.
yeah, and you'll probably see, you've seen Brandy and I get on to do these episodes. We started off the first episode together is a little bit more rough than these episodes are now, and we'll get better as co-hosts together as we continue to grow and get better at this, right? You come watch
Mhm.
this podcast a year from now, I bet we'll probably be even better as,
Oh, yeah.
as co-hosts than we are today, right? And that just comes from learning and practicing and doing the work together, and
Mhm.
that is how you succeed with podcasting at all, right? It's that consistency over time that
Mhm.
I think we've probably mentioned on every single episode, consistency over time.
Probably.
Yeah.
That important.
It's that important, right? Consistency over time and learning how to tell stories to be entertaining. And anyways, that's I think from a high level, those are all the things that I want people to know, right? Is that
Mhm.
you're going to be building an educational podcast. Take the time to use your tools and your mnemonics and other things to make it not just educational but empowering. And then learn how to tell your stories in a way that are either fun or they're engaging or they're memorable, right? And I know we used comedy as a thing that you recommend you learn to tell stories from comedians. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be funny, right? Sometimes
Right.
you can, it's just a method of telling stories where it's engaging, right? It's engaging to
Mhm.
listen to. And
Right.
I haven't been particularly funny in this episode, but hopefully, just hearing me talk through these things, you're understanding them and you're getting them and you're not bored to tears by, what
Right.
we're what we're going through. But yeah,
Hopefully.
that's the 3 E's: education, empowerment, and entertainment for what goes into the content of an episode.
Mhm. Alright, if I don't have anything to add if you're all good.
Yeah, I think we're all good. And I know the last couple of episodes we've given you a teaser of what we're going to talk about next week. We don't
Hmm.
have that planned out yet, so we
No,
will.
we
You
don't.
get surprise episode for next week, and we'll see what's
Yeah.
coming up next, and we'll have more content for you. So yeah, that's all I've got for now.
Alrighty. Well, I mean, if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you go ahead and follow, subscribe, like, whatever platform you're on, you know. And if you have any specific questions, feel free to comment them, and we will try to get around to answering them the best we can. So, alrighty.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us this week on pbp.fm. Make sure to visit our website, pbp.fm, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or via RSS so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on Apple Podcasts. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. And if you'd like to get help building an omnipresent content marketing strategy with a podcast and you want help, you might want to book a podcast strategy session with us at pbp.fm. Just click the Book a Strategy Session button and book a time on our calendar. We look forward to speaking with you. And be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.